Hello, comic book junkies, it's the Frog Queen here, and I'm coming at you with a brand new comic book review. Today I've chosen to review Godkillers. This is a newer series. It just came out from Aftershock. Yes, Aftershock. I had to think about that for a second. Aftershock Comics. This is written by Mark Sable and the art by Man House with some Jeremy Hahn covers, actually. Yeah, so I guess we'll just dive right into it, and maybe we'll do a little bit of an update on the channel and everything and comics after we talk about the book a little bit. So the first issue came out in February. The second issue just came out, I believe. Yes, issue 2 came out on March 25th. I had to look that up and double check because I wasn't 100% sure. My brain kind of did that. Oh, did it come out? Because we're experiencing that good old comic shortage. Not really a shortage, just delay. We're not going to get comics for a bit. But we all know that. We're making peace with it. I'm making peace with it. And that's why I decided to talk comics. So at least you can decide if maybe this is one that you want to add when comics start up again. Anyway, Godkillers is a different kind of book for me. It is not something I thought I'd honestly be picking up. So the name Godkillers, the book has its name after a special unit detail squad, kind of military squad. They've named themselves Godkillers, and everybody in the unit is kind of a different religious or non-religious background. And it was really the covers, I guess, that drew me into this. On top of the name, Godkillers, yes, that's a very me kind of name. You know, I like something that's a bit of horror and paranormal and, you know, kind of dealing with religion without kind of like laughing in the face of religion, I guess, is what I assumed it would kind of be. But it's not really like that. It's just kind of like what I thought when I first heard the name Godkillers. And because I've read other books that Man House has drawn, illustrated, I thought that this might be the type of book for me. And honestly, it's not. Honestly, there's only parts of it that I really like. I am not a fan of this kind of modern warfare type story. I do really have a special place in my heart for old war stories, like anything about Vietnam or anything about World War II or World War One. I even like Civil War books and stories, like those kinds of stories. But I've never really liked anything that dealt with today's modern kind of war, or even hell, like the last 20 years of modern war. I don't know if it's just that I don't really like modern. I don't really want to be reminded of the horribleness of today's modern world. I think that's why I don't enjoy it. Even like when I play war video games, I prefer to play the ones that take place in either fictitious wars or historic wars, not something that's happened in the last 20 years. So this story is dealing with the modern military, and I don't even know anything about modern military guns, so that kind of stuff and like ordnance, it just kind of like bubbles in my head, and I'm like, I don't know and I don't care. Anyway, that's my short answer on that. So that's why at first when I got into the story, I was like, oh God, modern war. Ugh. So this actually it does take place during kind of like our current modern World War state, I guess, if you want to say. I feel like the world has been at war for such a long time that this is the Third World War, but nobody else recognizes it as that. They're just like, oh, it's the war in Iraq, and there's the war here, and the war, you know, whatever. See, I feel anxious just talking about it. Anyway, this story actually, it takes place in Malaysia, I believe it was. No, the Philippines, I'm sorry. So the main character is an atheist, Arab American, who is fighting ISIS in the Philippines. I had to write that out to remind myself, because even like in my head that sounded very complicated to try and remember and tell you about. So that's how I did it. I wrote it out. So for him, he's an atheist, but he does kind of find something in his travels. My phone is going off. That kind of makes him believe that maybe there is something out there that might be God related, maybe not. And he does kind of talk about his strained relationship with the Muslim faith, with Islam, and how he doesn't believe in it, but he finds himself defending it all the time, and he doesn't really know why, which is kind of interesting. The things that the main character says, his storytelling is what I find interesting about this book. I don't find the subject matter very interesting, and like I said, I don't like anything that really has to do with modern war. I don't care that part of the story, the actual war part of the story. I don't enjoy, and I don't like the other characters at all. In fact, they're all kind of wishy-washy, and unfortunately, although I've always enjoyed Man House's work in the past, I did find it very difficult to tell the characters apart, because they're all wearing military uniform, and they all look so similar, although there are two females. The only definitive character to really tell them apart is one of them has glasses. But most of the drawing it's very dark and gaunt, and I get that it's a dark story, but a lot of the faces, the facial features, are obscured by the shadows. And so all the characters kind of look the same to me. Which is bad, since they're all of different nationalities, and it should be easier to tell them apart, frankly. That's just me. And I mean, I gave this story, these first two issues, just a read through. I didn't read them twice. I just read each issue once. You know, sometimes for some more complicated books and stuff, I'll read the books over and over again, or the issues repeatedly. This is just a once read through. And I just literally finished reading it. So I just kind of sat here this morning, well, it's lunchtime now, and read them through. Now, the issue 2 cover is particularly amazing looking, and it was what really sold me on the story, other than the title, Godkillers. So what they find, and I don't feel like I'm spoiling the story by telling you this, because A, the monster's on the cover of issue 2, and B, you meet the monster almost immediately in issue 1, so it's not a big deal. But they come across this giant headless woman beast, and this is actually a piece of folklore I've actually heard about in the past. It's a Malaysian vampire, essentially, which I watch. I have kind of like a sick curiosity, really morbid fascination with particularly scary folklore tales around the world, and so I do watch a lot of YouTube videos that are kind of centered on that stuff. So, I mean, I recognized the monster on the cover, and I was like, oh, I love this particular folklore story, and it is very scary when you read the real stories behind it. Anyway, we get to see this character, and this character's kind of brought to life, even though she's undead. She's brought to life in this story because she does speak, and you get to talk to her, and she is a character. She's not just a scary monster. So that is one aspect of it that I really enjoyed. Let me just fix... I'm so sorry about the lighting again. I decided to try and use some natural light, and of course my camera is having a hard time. It keeps auto adjusting even though I've turned that off. Anyway, I've tried to fix it so that I'm not just this glaring white bright light and my nose disappears and stuff like that. Regardless, where was I? Yeah, so I'm gonna try and pronounce what this Malaysian vampire is, and I don't know if I will be able to say this. I think I opened it up here. It's a Penanggalan, and Penang Galan. I don't know. You could say it any one of those ways. And I guess I could try and find someone, even if I actually tried to, yeah, there's no real point in me trying to listen to someone else pronounce it. That's not going to help me. I'm just not that kind of person. Anyway, you can also see these in Dungeons and Dragons, apparently. They sometimes pop up in Dungeons and Dragons. Excuse me for a moment. I am going to pour my tea that's been over steeping on the floor. Tea. So yes, she's a character in this. She's not just a spooky, scary monster that just kills people. I mean, she kills people, yes. She does. But she also talks. And basically this whole story from the beginning is that the military, ISIS, tried to utilize this scary vampire, Malaysian vampire, as a kind of biological weapon. And the reason they found her is because they first thought that there was this disease that was killing people all over Malaysia. And that happened to not actually be a disease, or so they think. There still could be disease. They don't know. And they find this vampire. Now, the vampire herself, from actual folklore, and she's drawn in the comic just like the folklore version, the Malaysian monster, she's a disembodied head with the spine and entrails attached to her. And to kill people, I guess, she has to leave her body. So the head and towards the bottom, the spine and innards, leave the torso, the rest of the body, to go float around it and kill everything. She mostly likes pregnant women, according to folklore. I guess those are the tastiest, because it's like 2 for the price of 1, I guess. So yeah, it's a really creepy tale. You should definitely look it up. But I don't know. In the end, so far, the story to date, we get to hear, I don't want to spoil it all, but we do get to hear from this creepy vampire, and she is a person. She is a person in a way. And she's immortal. She's been alive or undead for a very, very long time. So yeah, I don't know. So I think the main character's inner monologue is interesting enough to keep me reading this for a while. I'm not sure how long of. I think it's a mini series. I believe it's just 5 or 6 issues, although it doesn't seem to say here. I'm looking at Previews World. It doesn't seem to want to tell me, which is very typical of Previews World, which is just, I shouldn't be the site that I'm looking at. Regardless, I will keep reading it for these reasons, but like I said, as long as there's not that much of the military stuff in it, I am just really not interested in modern warfare. I don't care. I don't know, how do you feel about those kinds of modern war stories? And every time every time I hear the word ISIS, and it's not talking about the ancient Egyptian goddess, I just feel annoyed or depressed or anxious or some combination of those things. And so, yeah, my brain just can't deal with it. So, like I said, not a typical story for me, but it's got the kind of folklore, it's got the horror, yeah, and it's got the, the inner monologue and dealing with one's, I don't know. His faith is shaken. His lack of faith is shaken. And I like that kind of stuff. Anyway. So yeah, I guess that's it for this comic book review. It's just kind of a quickie. Like I said, I'm trying to do these less structured than I normally do, because too much structure has been very overwhelming for me lately. I can't deal with something that's that rigorously structured, and I do feel kind of pulled in a lot of places right now, and I'm working on my own book, so I'm trying not to overwhelm myself with tasks right now, especially during the quarantine. I mean, I'm used to being home and being alone a lot, so it doesn't really bother me. That's not kind of what bothers me. It's like when I have to go out to get groceries. I am overwhelmed by people acting really, really poorly. And that has caused me some anxiety because it feels like any day people are going to start rioting or, I don't know, becoming violent. Like, it does feel like that when I go out. People are wearing gas masks in our city because they think that that's going to help them. So I hope everybody else is handling quarantine or isolation or social distancing or all those things in a good way. I mean, like I said, it doesn't really make any difference to me other than the few times that I have to leave the house. I find very anxious about it. But everything's kind of the same for the most part, so I'm not too bad, and I've got lots of books to read, so I'll have a new episode up of what I'm currently reading, because I've got lots of stuff that I have been reading and going through, and yeah, oh my god, it's April, so it's time for a new edition of that, and I'm going to try my best to get things out faster. That seems to be... I'm just really preoccupied with my own book and reading, and then I don't want to actually sit in front of the camera. I think that's my problem. So I'm also kind of thinking about trying to do a podcast and maybe incorporate that through YouTube as well. I don't know. Anyway, thanks so much, guys, and let me know what you're reading. Let me know if you've checked out Godkillers, and yeah, until next time, read something good. Bye.